All right, well, coach's poll got released today. I know it probably had a hard time sleeping last night. So excited waiting on this amazing preseason coaches poll that gets released every year around the middle of August. Thank you for all the comments that are going to get left on this video telling me that the coaches poll is pointless, that preseason polls are pointless, that polls in general are pointless, that the only thing that matters is the playoff committee. Thank you for saying all the things and pointing all the things out that we all already know. So doesn't matter whether I agree or disagree about how pointless polls are or aren't. I just wanted to make this video real quick. I'll put the top 25 up on the screen. Again, this is the coaches poll. I guess we'll do 1 through 10, 11 through 20, and then 21 through 25. And I'll just I give you some quick thoughts on it here. Here's the top 10. Now, first of all, take teams 1 through 5 here. This is something I've been saying really since last season ended. These are the top 5 teams. At least these are the 5 teams that deserve to be ranked in the top 5 heading into 2021. The order that anybody puts these 5 teams in is irrelevant to me. I do believe that there are arguments that can be made for all 5 of these teams in all 5 of these positions. So the coaches have Alabama 1. Not a big surprise there. I know we all like to hate on Alabama as fans, sort of the evil empire type of thing, Darth Saban. But you got to understand, these coaches got a ton of respect for Nick Saban and what he's been able to do there. And the fact that they lose their quarterback and some wide receivers and some running backs, that doesn't matter to these coaches because these coaches know Alabama recruits at a ridiculous level, and this is not the first time Nick Saban has lost a ton of offensive production from one year to the next. And rarely does it seem to matter. So I don't have a problem there. Clemson at 2. I've got no problem there. They've got one of the best defenses in America. Like Alabama, they lose a quarterback and a running back. But they got plenty of talent. Ukulele started 2 games last year. So it's not like he's never gotten his feet wet. Oklahoma, to me, probably the easiest case to make for number 1 would be Oklahoma, just because they don't lose the things that Alabama and Clemson are losing. Primarily a quarterback. They've got the Heisman favorite, Spencer Rattler. I mean, you know they're going to score 40 points a game without even trying. But I've got no problem with him at 3. Ohio State at 4, same thing, new quarterback. And Georgia at 5 returns almost all of their offense. And like Clemson, will have one of the best defenses. So I've got no problem with this top 5 or the order that it's in. Any order you put this top 5 in would be fine with me. The only issue I would have is if you had some other team in the top 5 instead of these 5. 6 through 10, you got Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Iowa State, North Carolina, and Cincinnati. It's nice to see Cincinnati get the respect that I feel like they deserve. I've said this before. Georgia played a 10-game SEC schedule last year. Cincinnati was the best defense we played all year, period, bar none. Alabama's defense got better as the season went along. Georgia played Georgia played Alabama early in the year. In fact, halftime of the Georgia-Alabama game, in my mind, was really the turning point of the season for the Alabama defense. If you remember, that know-nothing midget Stetson Bennett lit Alabama up in the first half of that game. Georgia, per usual, was dominating Alabama at halftime. Different Alabama defense showed up in the second half. Georgia didn't score a single point, and the rest is history. Alabama went on to dominate the rest of the season. So I'm glad to see Cincinnati get some respect here. I think they're a pretty good team. North Carolina at 9. North Carolina's a hard team to peg. They lost a couple of 1,000-yard running backs, but they got Sam Howell back. Might be the most talented team, if you're going by recruiting rankings, that North Carolina's had in a long, long time. I have no problem with him at 9. They could easily finish in the top 10. There are some people that think they can challenge Clemson in the ACC. Again, Iowa State, a team that you don't normally see in a preseason top 10 poll, but I think they deserve to be there based on the way they played last year and the fact that they've got almost everybody coming back. They play in a weak, watered-down Big 12, and Matt Campbell is one of the hottest names in coaching right now. Notre Dame would be probably the one team in the top 10 that I have a problem with. Notre Dame loses a ton on offense, including a quarterback. They got a new defensive coordinator. And Notre Dame's got a pretty tough schedule. They got to play Southern Cal. They got to play Cincinnati. They got to play North Carolina. They got to play Wisconsin. Notre Dame could easily lose all 4 of those games. No guarantee, of course, that they will. But Notre Dame doesn't recruit at the level of an Alabama, a Clemson, or an Ohio State, who also lost their starting quarterback that got them to the playoffs. Notre Dame does. And the guy they have, Jack Cohn, we know who he is and what he can do, and more importantly, what he can't do. Notre Dame is and has been a game-changing quarterback and a couple of wide receivers away from taking the next step in college football. And moving from Ian Book to Jack Cohn is not going to get them where, that's not how you take the next step. Jack Cohn is a good quarterback. He completes a high percentage of passes, but he throws safe, short passes the majority of the time. He's not going to go out and win a game for you. He's the type of quarterback, the best you can hope is that he doesn't lose one for you. I don't think Notre Dame will finish the season in the top 10. So if I had to pick one top 10 team that I had an issue with here in this poll, it would be Notre Dame. I think they're a little too high. All right, let's move on to number 11 through 20. You've got Florida at 11, Oregon at 12, LSU at 13, Southern Cal at 14, Wisconsin at 15, Miami at 16, Indiana at 17, Iowa at 18, Texas at 19, and Penn State at 20. Let's start with LSU and Penn State. Okay, LSU at 13, Penn State at 20. Now, these two teams were absolutely pitiful last year, at least in terms of their record versus expectations, right? Penn State started the season off on, a 4 or 5 game losing streak. One of the worst seasons Penn State has had in my lifetime. LSU, coming off a national title, undefeated season, struggled to go 5-5. But I said, both of these teams are way too talented to have those type of records. Last year, in the case of LSU and Penn State, was an anomaly. So I've got no problem with LSU and Penn State being ranked in the top 20 in this year's preseason poll. The talent on those two teams is way better than what their records indicated last year, so I've got no problem there. Florida at 11, I feel like that's a little bit too high. Florida, sort of like Notre Dame in my opinion. I don't think they can replace what they lost offensively. Florida, think about some of the great offenses Florida had under Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer. They pale in comparison to what we saw Florida do last year with Kyle Pitts, Kyle Trask, and those wide receivers. Kyle Trask is gone. Kyle Pitts is gone. 2 of the starting 3 wide receivers are gone. I just don't think Dan Mullen and the Florida Gators have recruited well enough to replace those guys and not take a step back. I don't see it happening. I just don't see it happening at all. Emory Jones, it looks like, is going to be the starting QB. This is a guy that I haven't been high on since his time in high school. He hasn't played that much at Florida. When he has played, it's been a play here or there. A lot of running plays for Emory Jones. I think you're going to see a different Florida offense this year. You will see, Kyle Trask, for everything he could do with his arm, he was not your typical Dan Mullen QB in terms of running around. Emory Jones is more of that. So I do think you'll see more of a mobile QB type of thing at Florida this year. But they just lose way too much. They still have Todd Grantham as defensive coordinator. They're currently on a 3-game losing streak. They lost to LSU, Alabama, and then Oklahoma to end the season last year. I think 11 is a little bit too high for Florida. Oregon at 12. That's interesting to me. That's the highest ranked Pac-12 team, Oregon. Oregon at 12, Southern Cal at 14, Washington, we didn't get to yet, but Washington is at 21. Hard for me to differentiate or separate those 3 teams, to be honest with you. I think all 3 of those teams will finish in the top 20. And the potential for at least one of those teams to finish in the top 10 or maybe even the top 5. I think Southern Cal is going to be really, really good with Keaton Slovis back at QB. Oregon's got unbelievable talent, has recruited like crazy under Mario Cristobal. And Washington could be sort of the sleeper pick there. Got no problem with those 3 teams being inside the top 20. In fact, I would probably move Washington up into the top 20 a little bit higher. Wisconsin at 15. Listen, you don't even have to look Wisconsin up. You can just pick Wisconsin 15th in every single preseason poll, and that's going to be pretty good, right? Yeah, they're going to finish top 10 some years. Yeah, they're going to finish 21 or 22 some years. Wisconsin's going to win 9, 10 games a year in their sleep. Period. That's just what they do. 15 seems like the perfect spot for Wisconsin, not just in this poll, but in every preseason poll. Miami at 16, I think that's too low. I think Miami should be higher. I'm buying into Miami. I know their recent struggles. I know that they've had 2 or 3 good seasons in the last 15 years, and every single time after that good season, they have fell off the map and won 5 or 6 games. I get that. But to me, that's the only question about Miami. Are they going to suffer the same fate they've suffered before? They had a good season last year. They were, I believe, 9-2 in the regular season. Their only losses were to North Carolina and Clemson, I believe it was. And then they lost their bowl game to Oklahoma State to finish, I think, 9-3, one of the best seasons they've had in a while. We've seen them have seasons like that before, like I mentioned, and then every single time the following year, they're terrible. I don't see it happening this year. They get the quarterback back, De'Aaron King. They got a lot more back on offense. I think their defense is going to be much improved over what we saw last year. I think Miami's going to win 10-plus games again, I believe, in the regular season in 2021. I think 16 is too low. I think they should be much closer to the top 10, maybe even hovering around the 10 spot. Indiana, way too high. I don't know why people are so high on Indiana. I don't get it. Indiana's probably the one team that seems to be getting hyped this offseason that I totally just don't get. I don't understand it. I think it's possible Indiana doesn't even make a bowl game in 2021. That's how down I am on Indiana this year. They would be a borderline top 25 team for me. Having them at 17 in this coaches poll to me seems too high. Iowa at 18, similar to Wisconsin. You can rank Iowa and Wisconsin in any given year in a preseason between 12 and 18, and you're probably going to be just about dead on. Texas at 19. I've got mixed feelings on Texas. I like Sarkisian, but first-year head coach, you never really know what you're going to get. They're replacing a quarterback. I love their running back situation. Their defense has been an epic disappointment lately. Oklahoma and Iowa State are both really, really good. I do think there's room in the Big 12 for 3 or 4 ranked teams. Texas should be in that mix somewhere. I guess I don't really have a huge problem with Texas here at 19. I can see an argument made for maybe ranking them up closer to 15, and I can also see an argument being made to rank them maybe down below Oklahoma State. But they've got them at 19. Okay, fine. And finally, 21 through 25, Washington, Oklahoma State, Louisiana Lafayette, Coastal Carolina, and Ole Miss. Already talked about Washington. Oklahoma State, I think Oklahoma State's going to have a good year. Now, a good year for Oklahoma State is 8-4, 9-3. That's been pretty much their ceiling under Gundy. You go back and look at the record of Oklahoma State over the last 10 years. So I think it's possible they could finish the season ranked higher than 22. But to do that, they're going to have to beat everybody they're supposed to beat and only lose to the teams ranked ahead of them, which would be Texas, Oklahoma, and Iowa State. If they do that and go 9-3, I can see them finishing maybe in the 15 to 16 range. If they lose to a Kansas State or a TCU, they could finish the season unranked. But I've got no problem with having them 22 in a preseason poll. Lafayette and Coastal Carolina, I sort of have a problem with this. I don't have a lot of faith in these smaller group of 5 schools that have one good year. And let's be real, that's what these two teams had. They had one good year in a really weird year. The COVID restrictions, they had really good years. These teams aren't Cincinnati or Central Florida or Boise State or Memphis. These teams that, those are teams we've seen win 9 and 10 plus games multiple times over 10, 15-year periods. It's hard for me to completely buy into Lafayette or Coastal Carolina, given the fact that they seem to have only done that the one year. So I'm not going to pitch a fit that they're ranked in the top 25. But they would be probably, for me, they would be in others receiving votes most likely. 25, Ole Miss. What a wild card Ole Miss is. The potential to score 50 points a game. The potential to beat Alabama this year. The potential to beat Texas A&M this year. Also, the potential to lose to Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Auburn. I mean, their defense is absolutely horrible. Matt Corral, when he's not turning the ball over, is a good quarterback. Lane Kiffin's offense, we all know about that. Ole Miss is the wild card here. I definitely think Ole Miss deserves to be ranked in the top 25 in the preseason based on their offensive potential and the fact that offense is winning games right now. But their defense is going to let them down multiple times this season. And no matter how good that offense is, if Matt Corral does what he did last year, which is go out and throw 6 interceptions in one game, they're going to lose. So I think 25 is fair. I think they could finish the season top 15 if they get a win over an Alabama, Texas A&M, or LSU. But again, even if they do that, I would expect them to lose to a couple of terrible teams. That's just kind of, in my mind, what Ole Miss is. All right, there you go. There's the top 25 coaches preseason poll. Let me know what you think down below in the comments section. I will have my final preseason poll out, not this Monday, but next Monday. Till then, have a good morning.